I call this Altoona City Council meeting to order Tuesday, October 12th at 6 p.m. We will now have a moment of silent prayer. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Linda, would you take the roll call, please?
Vice Mayor Butterball.
Here.
Councilman Kushadi.
Here.
Councilman Carper.
Here.
Councilman Ickes.
Here.
Councilwoman Jordan is absent. Councilman Kelly.
Here.
Mayor Pacifico.
Here. We have a presentation on the agenda tonight from Public Works Director Nate Kissel, and it is the Public Works Department Annual Report.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to showcase the activities that took place in 2020 throughout the Public Works Department. Although it takes a great deal of time to gather the stats and pictures to present, this outlet is probably the best way to showcase what we do, since a lot of what we do isn't like a daily activity. It takes place over seasons or sometimes years. So every year it does take a lot of work to get this put together, even though the framework of it stays the same, taking the pictures and putting everything together and trying to come up with the stats. I think it's a really great thing that everybody works on throughout the years. And, you know, I look forward to presenting it and all the activities and inspections that pass through the hands of everybody within the department with the goal of moving the needle to the positive. In 2020, Public Works was home to 54 full-time employees. 2 weeks to flatten the curve turned into a year of COVID. Just because the pandemic hit, the city didn't stop requiring attention. In fact, it probably needed more. Just like first responders, including police and fire, our folks, like other city departments, had to show up for work. Critical workers still had a duty to report and perform core activities so that the city could function safely. Roads needed fixed, pipes continued to be clogged, signals and streetlights broke, needed attention. And yes, leaf bags still needed to be picked up. I'm extremely proud to say that collectively, everyone stepped up to the plate and in all but extreme cases didn't let the fear of COVID stop them from performing their duties. Sadly, though, at the end of 2020, with COVID, we did lose three full-time employees to budget cuts in the 21 budget. Our seasonal staff for winter normally includes 2 winter patrols. We've included funding throughout past years for 2 additional shift workers to cover the plow routes, sidewalks, city facilities, a lot of things that we hear complaints on, but we've just not been successful in filling these positions because there's no shortage of full-time work out there in the job market. In the summertime, we employ summer positions in the parks and highway maintenance divisions, as well as in past years, we've started to have a person or 2 in engineering, and they've started to really take a lot of the old paper drawings that we have all through the basement, whether they're in Public Works or in codes, and we've been able to start scanning those so that we can get rid of the boxes of paper that just clutter City Hall. So 2020 was kind of a strange year, but sadly it was the first year that we weren't able to fill all the positions that we had available for college kids. In 2020, we had a few changes to personnel that I think that are important to showcase. Dane Williams completed a MBIS Bridge Inspector certification. Al Hikes, our Highway Superintendent, and Greg Hale, one of our lead men, obtained pesticide applicator licensure. Greg Hale moved from the parks to an inlet lead person. Nick Daniels and Jason Feathers were hired as full-time custodians. Tony Emmerich was promoted to a maintenance worker. Andrew Weimer and Brandon Grimes were promoted to EO2s. Mike Emmerich was hired as a laborer. Mark O'Connor was promoted to an equipment operator. Rob Dennis moved from the codes department to the parks department as a lead person. Jeff Arthurs was hired as a full-time lineman 1 in the electrical department. Rob Crossman, Steve Walker, and Jordan Reichley, all of the engineering department, also obtained their bridge inspection recertification. And Rob Crossman also recertified as a certified floodplain manager. In 2020, make sure I'm looking at the right one. In 2020, we had one retirement. Mark Christ, 36 plus years in the city. If anybody knew Mark, he was always one of the most helpful people in, I think, Public Works as a whole, but he really kind of went out of his way to make sure that, things were getting done, and we were always trying to take steps to make sure that things were done correctly and neatly, and he was kind of the yin to my yang, where I'm always kind of at 100 miles an hour, and Mark would kind of reel me back into a speed that was safe, and so he is missed. So I hope he enjoys retirement. Sadly, we had one of our finest employees pass away in 2020, Chet Mosey. I can't say enough about this guy. He's probably the kindest, most caring individual that I ever met. Probably one of the strongest, too. I think he was the only one that could pick up a manhole lid by himself and not hurt himself. On a happy note, though, we're kind of remembering him every year. We started a beanbag tournament out at the Highway Yard, and all the money that we raise, we've donated to the Christmas Carol Foundation in his honor. So we hope to continue that throughout the years to come. So, Public Works as a whole was probably best known for the big projects that we complete in the city: storm sewers, paving, parks. Those are kind of the big things that people think, I think most of, that they see being built and can see things. But there are activities that I think, showcase the seasonal tasks, which are sometimes forgotten, not realized, or just overlooked. A lot of these activities are important and many times required as part of a living, breathing city. So last year, or in 2020, I guess, we did about 380 utility restorations. So, the billable revenue for that was about $500,000 that went towards the general fund. Over 500,000 pounds of street sweeper debris. We have 2 street sweepers out every day. Over 500,000 pounds of leaf waste. That's mostly in the form of leaf bags. 382 inlets cleaned, 83 inlet repairs. Over 1,700 customer concerns. That's both out at the Highway Yard and in the engineering department. Over 400 sign replacements, and over 440 acres of parks grass mowed. A few more stats just to throw in: about 2,700 man hours in leaf and brush collection for bagged leaf removal, 3,800 full-time man hours and 2,880 part-time man hours for lawn and park care. Almost 1,700 tons of blacktop placed doing those street restorations. That's about 75 tons a week, which is pretty good. Summer shifts about 7 months long, and the winter fall shifts are about 5 months long. So I think it's important to showcase. I haven't showed this before, but I believe the leaf bag pickup service that the city manager and council has provided the city residents free of charge. Other than the cost of the bags, the service is free, and it does involve a significant amount of resources to accomplish. I know that we get a lot of people call in. You didn't get my stuff on Monday, and it's on Tuesday. But I just want to again kind of showcase that it doesn't cost anything for the service, and we try to do the best we can. We always want to provide a good service, but it's about $100,000 annually. No bag charge to the residents. Program runs between 7 and 8 weeks, and it takes usually between 8 and 10 employees. So if you look at the 54, there's about 37, 36-ish at the Highway Yard, so it's taking more than a third of them to take care of this. Winter's always a trying time for residents in the city, as you know. Crews are on 2 shifts throughout the winter from December to March. I'd just like to, again, commend the employees for being responsive on call-outs, showing up and getting the job done quickly. I say this during every report, but in this age of negative social media, and I think we all kind of see that, I still want the public to know that our drivers are some of the most dedicated people out there. The discussions that I have with them when we're out, I don't plow, but I'm out there with them, and just kind of the stories they tell and the care, and they want to do a good job, and probably sometimes they put more material down than what I want them to, But the end result is they're just trying to make the streets safe, and they really do a great job. You know, the average plow route has about 25 miles of roadway. Once it stops snowing, it takes about 12 hours to get through the streets on that route. And usually, you know, between 24 and 36 hours to get 2 lanes passable. Just want to kind of open up the invitation again that, you know, stress if anybody wants to come out and ride along with them, it's absolutely eye-opening. You know, the nooks, the crannies, dead ends, campers, trailers, you know, anything that you could think of, couches, chairs that are on the street. You know, it's amazing what they have to weave around and the things that they, you know, kind of see when they're out there plowing. And as you know, people tend to get angry when you plow the snow back into where they just shoveled out, but there's not a whole lot of other places to put it. So just as a whole, keep in mind that, you know, these guys are out. If it's not during business hours, they're out on the weekend. It's a voluntary call out somewhere in the middle of a 12-hour shift. 7 days a week. Sometimes these guys are missing holidays and birthdays and things like that. So, you know, just be a little compassionate to them. This is just one of the many tasks that I would lump into the core activities of what the highway department does. It's a typical street restoration. These activities consume about 10 people, as I mentioned before, every day during the warm weather months. The money that's generated through street restorations all but pays for these employees' wages throughout the warm weather months. These are billed to the utilities when the repairs are completed. When they're out doing this type of work, you know, other type of work are done when they're on these roads. So potholes, you know, little kind of concerns that we get from residents, we take care of when we're doing this. So, you know, having these folks in the winter, you know, they pay for them. This is what helps us to provide that 24-hour coverage in inclement weather. Helps to allow businesses, hospitals, schools, and public transportation to operate during inclement weather. Even with COVID, we again had a very successful overtime restoration program with the guys at the yard. And, you know, we almost need to do that every year just to kind of keep up with the utility cuts that we have coming in. It's just one of the projects done by the inlet crew. This is a relocation of a storm line in the front yard of a resident in West Chestnut Avenue. For most projects, it take about a week to do in the field. You know, anything from a day or a week. There's probably about a week or two of planning that goes into the combination, whether it's me or Al or one of the foremen, to make sure that they have the materials they have. Inlet blocks are ordered, they're the right height. So there's a lot of planning that goes on besides just going out and digging a hole in the ground. The Parks Department. The Parks Department maintains about 440 acres annually. But, you know, these folks are really the cobbler elves that make other things happen. Putting out the charcoal grills at, up on, what's the park got? Highland Park, yeah, I couldn't think of it, sorry. Putting out the charcoal grills up there, taking care of the leaf collection out on our public streets, tree trimming for the paving program, tents, that stuff's done through this department. These particular pictures, they were out in Garden Heights putting a little bit back up in after we got the paving program done. And then the other picture there was from Margaret Avenue when these guys had to go in and clean the entire building out last year, you know, before we started the improvements there. So when the crews have the opportunity to break out of the norm, and they do, and we get a lot of days where we get vacations, we get heavy on vacations, and we have half crews, we always try to keep a steady diet of other projects, I guess, to take care of. So in 2020, we didn't really have that many, but we did help CBRC with a project down at Fairview Park, and we helped them dig and excavate for a new swing set that somebody donated to them so that wheelchairs could, you know, take advantage of the park down there. And then we also, the crews took care of the tree cutting, tree trimming, and erosion and sedimentation controls up on 39th Street for the sewer project. So by doing stuff like that, we were able to keep the cost low for the homeowners that benefited from that line. 2020, we continue to improve our street sign inventory with a new look that has the bump on the top and the City of Altoona logo on it that you've probably seen around. We try to do a few neighborhoods annually to make a difference. We also performed about 475 additional sign installations. Like I said, we're always trying to move the needle to the positive. We have about 80 signalized intersections in the city to take care of. So these intersections have a permit by PennDOT. Signs, paint, preventive maintenance are all items that we have to take care of to stay in compliance. So, between city signs and the maintenance of these intersections, as well as the non-protected school zones that we work with APD to make sure that we get taken care of in high-vis crossings, we just don't have time for a lot of other non-protected intersections, I will say. So, we get concerns all the time that come in and say, could you please do Juniata? Could you please do this? Could you please add one here? Between the time that it takes to do this and not take away from other core activities that the group does, it's almost impossible without subcontracting it out. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We try to do this in the summertime, when we have the weather to do so, and we use the summer help, the college program, they become the flaggers. So it works out pretty well, and we can get most of the stuff done that we need to get done. I'd also like to report that the Inlets crew also acted in the role of first responders in 2020, and they were instrumental in saving 8 ducklings. This picture came from Victor, I believe. So if you take into account that these ducklings will have ducklings, and those ducklings will have ducklings. These guys are on their way to sainthood. So this is kind of new. I want to highlight our fab shop. We have a fab shop now out at the highway yard, and we had a few employees that stepped up in recent years and asked for some training on welding. So we got them some training, and since then we've been able to use those skills to produce some products that will, would have cost us a lot more if we had to go elsewhere. So this particular picture was some steel that we bought and we designed in-house. And we keep all of our spreaders on for the winter trucks. And this is set up so you can run a forklift into it and move these around the yard so that we don't have it in one spot all the year. The next picture, you can kind of see in the background by the mural down at Heritage Plaza. Our guys actually, we built the poles, and then we were able to string the lights that, we call them the parking lot lights, that used to be over where the new pavilion is. So they built that in the fab shop, and then the electrical department put that up. Just a few facts from the electrical department. We have 80 signals in the city. We have 102 we maintain between Logan Township and the city. Last year, 400 streetlight issues. Again, they're just getting slower. They're less responsive now, I guess, because we're a man short in that department. But we had over 400 streetlight issues, 260 traffic signal repairs. They take care of the one calls, so when they come in, anything we have underground that's our property, we're required by law, unfunded mandate, to mark this stuff out for contractors so they don't hit it. Maintain all the city buildings and the parks, including Blair Rec. There's about 50 PM activities they have to do annually, getting the poles up and running, getting the bathroom lights working, making sure all the GFCI fixtures work. A lot of that stuff goes in. Again, cobbler elf activities that you don't really think about but need to get done. LED replacements, the guys always do a pretty good job every year. With your help, we fund probably between 150 and 200 lights every year that they go out and work on when they have time. So we've been able to reduce the energy that we use on our street lights. So 2020 wasn't a big year for capital projects relating to the electrical department, but it was a big year in accidents. This is one of those categories of work that nobody really, sometimes sneaks by because it doesn't have a real grand presence. But, the electrical department and the highway department, again, they're the cobbler elves that show up to fix these in the middle of the night sometimes. After the police and fire leave, they're kind of left with the mess to take care, of what has to be fixed to get it back up and running after an intersection goes down or a street light's hanging on the ground and wires are hanging out. So 2020, we had 58,000 that we recouped from street light accidents, 45,000 in signal cabinets. We had about $10,000 in underground damage that a contractor hit after it was marked. And we have roughly around $50,000 that we haven't recovered yet, whether we're haggling with an insurance company or the payments are, behind, or sometimes, some of these, I don't know, insurance companies that you see on TV, they have a minimum that they're covered, and sometimes we have to liquidate and take what we can get on some of these. And sometimes we're not the first one in line. If there's an accident with somebody else, we may be second to, another person that was involved in the accident. So there's just two pictures of, one was in wintertime. That was a traffic signal cabinet. That was probably about $45,000 worth of damage, and a typical street light that we go out to take care of. Right now, it's taking between 12 and 16 weeks, sometimes longer, to get a new pole in for it, but that's about $5,000 worth of damage right there. So a lot of our projects aren't big. This particular project was caught doing annual PM services at Vets Field and just added to the list. We were fortunate enough that you all gave us money to take care of this issue, but the picture on the left there was the old signal cabinet. As you can see, it was this was taken out of the ground, but you can see the rust and the paint, and it was probably 30 to 35 years old. And the picture on the right was the new one that we were able to take care of last year. The Department of Public Works fleet, they do a great job pumping out the work. In 2020, we performed about 850 work orders. And most of the year there, we were without a full staff, whether somebody was out on workers' comp or COVID or some combination of quarantine or whatever you want to say. But fleet includes Blair Rec, APD, the fire department, highway, and codes. So we spent about $266,000 parts and outside services last year for our fleet. Public Works, as you know, we take care of the buildings too. We have the custodians that clean City Hall, council chambers, the police building, and the highway yard. So Nick Daniels, Jason Feathers, and Larry Nydleski, who was a recent ad from our demo program, do a great job keeping these facilities clean. Moving on to engineering, this department houses many functions that contribute to the city's success. In 20, we managed about $3.5 million worth of, work. When you think about engineering, the normal person typically thinks about a person sitting behind a desk at a workstation. Although that's true, it's just one of the tasks that we run through our engineering department. Not only do we design projects, we're the project manager. When we have a consultant from the outside design something for us, we actually become kind of a liaison because we're trying to solve their problems so that they can keep up with their, process that they're working on to get us projects ready. So we keep up on paperwork associated with public sector requirements and grant reimbursements. We bid projects, speed and traffic studies. I mentioned before we have 23 bridges that we have in-house inspectors to look over. We take care of driveway and street opening permits. We work with utilities on their existing and future paving projects. The department also writes grants for the work that we go after, and just answer and deal with anything else that kind of doesn't fit anywhere else. So floodplain management, sign requests, handicap sign requests come in. Every one of those have to be looked at. Somebody goes out from engineering. Land development reviews, we kind of share that in-house with the review of that stuff. We work with the codes department right now on that also. Invoicing, estimation, we take care of GIS mapping. We've been working with codes on that some more since Sabrina came on board. We also do some design and inspection in-house. So there's a list of the projects. I'm not going to really go through every one of them, but you can see there's quite a few, and we do that just about every year. That's probably about a normal workload for us. New additions in engineering. In 2020, we started to use 2 new services to get projects out the door quicker and sometimes to a bigger audience. We started to use PenBid. That's an online service. Many local and state agencies use this, and through the use of the service, we can now advertise and open bids in an all electronic format. The advantage of this is that we don't have to print and charge for paper plans and proposals. These guys you can download the stuff online, take a look at it, and sometimes never even really have to print it. We have a question and answer area on there that everybody asks a question, everybody else can see it, so it's fair across the board. It also does the math, and we don't have to have people come into City Hall now and sit while we open the bids. It kind of takes care of everything online, and it's really efficient for what we do, and we're very happy with it. There is a small fee that the contractor pays when they're the low bidder on the project and they get awarded the project. So we kind of use it where we feel that we're getting the most bang for our buck. Like our paving program, we never use it because we only ever get 2 bidders on it because of the distance to the plant. So the other thing that we've started to use is Gordian, which is job order contracting. And this is a service that was through the Keystone Purchasing Network and also an intermediate unit in the middle of the state. So they bid about 10,000 items: paint, drywall, pipe, you name it, they bid it. They pick the lowest qualified contractor to do it, and then we work with them on the scope of work. Where it's nice for small projects like a fire station bathroom, where you might spend $15,000, or that might be a little high, maybe $10,000 on a set of plans, and you're really not getting much out of that $10,000 other than you have to do it.
Hey Nate, you do mean the lowest qualified bidder, correct?
Yes.
Not the lowest qualified.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Sometimes just kind of runs together because you have it and you can't see the forest through the trees. So anyhow, it works out really well for us on those types of projects because you're just kind of spending money getting the plans ready to go, and you're not putting it towards the project. So we've had a lot of success. Tim had a project or two run through that, and we've had a project or two in the future in 21 run through it. So it also is nice because there's some antiquated state law from the turn of the century that you have to have multiple primes on projects over a certain size. So this allows you to use that without having to go through that process of 3 different sets of proposals and 3 different sets of plans. They've already done the work for us, so we do use that. Last year we spent about $1 million on resurfacing and $225,000 in CDBG areas. That's about 5 miles of roadway. That's about a 36-year average. Right now, I really feel that our roads are in pretty good shape overall, and we have, since I started to mill. So any of the roads that we've just kept building up, we're starting to mill down because we've ran out of curb reveal, and we're adding to our issues if we don't do that. But unfortunately, that's about 30% of the cost of paving. During the summer of 2020, the Water Authority, the city, and Logan Township worked to extend a sewer main. That's up on 39th Street area. We brought relief to some residents that would otherwise have to, put in holding tanks or go through some pretty hefty hoops to get their septic systems up and running again. So. And also in doing so, we put this thing in, and we think we get added about 9 buildable lots in the city that somebody can develop now. So riding on the coattails of that project was a 39th Street impoundment that we built up there, and that was really to help the neighborhood with some relief, water coming down, redirected or just overdevelopment. This was done in about the middle of the year. And we put some acceleration language in this contract so we could try to get it done by the end of 2020, and we did. Gwen Dobson was the engineer on the project, and Geyer Brothers was the low bidder, the lowest qualified bidder. Project was all but complete by December 15th. Again, this is probably the best picture that I have of that. This was during Hurricane Ida. Now, this is looking forward into 2021, but I think it's a huge impact for that area up there, and it really did help. We received about roughly 5 inches of rain over, I think, 12 or 13 hours. Again, the systems all seem to work when we get rain spaced out over a period of time. Also, in 2020, the city entered into an agreement with the Divorce Partnership to construct, a pavilion downtown. This was Dawn Divorce's Utopia. Eads was the designer on the project, and Ventura Construction Services was the GC and also the electrical contractor. Some of the things that our electrical superintendent, he added some remote features here so that he can turn lights on and off from home, so he doesn't have to come in anymore. So that's kind of been a big thing for us, and we really think this project was a huge success. The downtown people used this all year long. We were able to come up with some instructions for people who are using it. Again, a picture on the left there is just during construction, and the one on the right is that was the farmer's market in 2021. Couple pictures of the footers there that the actual columns rest on, and another picture of just construction as they were putting the roof on there. 13th Street crossover is next on the list. It was built in '99. 21 years later, we had to put a project out for some preventative maintenance. It was getting pretty rough. Project consisted of concrete repairs, elevator upgrades, epoxy surface treatment. Keller was the designer, and Midstate Construction was the GC. The left shows a picture of the bridge over the railroad tracks. That has the epoxy surface treatment on it. Picture on the right shows some of the concrete repairs that we had to do. That was the underneath of the stair tower that we had to form back in and pour. You can see the exposed rebar there. We had that in a couple locations down there. South 15th Street Improvement Project. This was a project that was let in the anticipation of a partnership between the city and PennDOT. PennDOT was doing some work up on Pleasant Valley Boulevard, and they wouldn't do it unless we extended the drainage to take care of like the additional flows that were going to come underneath Pleasant Valley Boulevard. So this was we feel, pretty successful project. Eads was the designer on the project, and McClellan Excavating was the general contractor. North 9th Avenue between North 12th Street and North 13th Street. This project was a 90% grant-funded project through the Dirt and Gravel Roads program through the Conservation District. For as long as I can ever remember, and for years beyond that, the road was gravel, North 9th Avenue. It was gravel, very steep, washed out every time we got a storm. This area up here, 3 property owners basically held all of the property that was along 9th Avenue. So kind of thinking outside the box, we eliminated 9th Avenue. We put a bunch of water breaks in it, reseeded it, and then we made some improvements into the alley. And so now the water kind of has to come down the alley, make a left-hand turn, go down the road, and then so it really gives it a chance to slow down. And we think this is another successful project for us. So there's a picture. The one on the left is actually looking up 9th Avenue. You can see it's all vegetated. There's no erosion coming out of there. Picture on the right is actually the North 8th Avenue alley that we repaved and grouted the ditch line, so the water actually has to come down there and then across the road and down. Next on the list is the West 14th Avenue Bridge. This project was led as a result of a bridge inspection that had some deficiencies that needed corrected. It was derated. It was a derated bridge on the bridge inspections. Surface of the road had to be milled down. The downstream fascia beam was removed. Type 1 and 2 deck repairs were done, and new abutment caps were poured, and the new asphalt overlay was placed on the project. Keller was the engineer or designer, and the Clearwater Construction was a general contractor. A few of the smaller projects that we kind of had a hand in, whether it was for Blair Rec or whomever. The top left is Jefferson Park. That was just a topping surface that we put down there last year for them. We did that with CDBG funding. 24th Street and 6th Avenue Phase 1 Play Park. That was the installation of a playground and a pavilion. We're currently in Phase 2 of that, although it's been delayed because of material shortage for the basketball hoops. So we're hoping to get a early spring start on that project. And again, probably at 8 o'clock, that is the new service over at Vets that I showed you before. 2020 also brought us some newer technologies. Not wanting to be flat earthers when possible, we research and try new technologies that make sense for us. In doing so, we try to explore not only the product, but also take into account factors such as installation, disruption of services to the public, and long-term maintenance of the product. These are a few pictures of the PVC form and fold pipe, which comes in rolls, steamed on the job site, pulled through existing failing pipes, and then blown up with air to establish the final shape. cost of this is anywhere from around $100 to $200 a foot. But last year we had a failure in the same area on 17th Street that we had to go out and actually fix. We had to dig up we had to demo the curb and gutter, dig up the road, replace the pipe, replace the curb and gutter, and it was around $350 a foot. So when it's appropriate, it definitely is a nice way to go with minimal disruption to, you know, the roadway, traffic control, etc. risk. So from left to right, you can see there that's actually a round pipe when it gets placed, but it actually comes on a coil roll and it's flat. It gets in a trailer, they heat it up, gets very pliable, they send it through the pipe and they pull it with the machine that's in the middle of this picture here. And then on the right hand side you can see the finished product that the pipe was all eaten out on the bottom. Normally we would have to tear that pipe out and put a new one in, but we were able to pull through this pipe, blow it up, and it becomes a brand new pipe, not having to disturb the surface at all.
What's life expectancy on something that we have?
Oh, 75 to 100 years and
Really?
beyond, yeah. Yeah. I mean, our kids won't have to worry about 17th Street ever again, which is a good thing. This is a recycled rubber product with a semi-osmotic binder. It's very easy to use, and the benefit we're hoping with this is, you know, a maintenance and trip-free hazard tree well. We're also trying to replace the accent strip in one of the downtown blocks this year to see how that performs, because the accent bricks downtown with the freeze-thaw cycle, they're just not looking the best these days, to put it nicely. So we're hoping to try a product with the rubber here to see how it works out. You know, looking ahead to 21, we actually, after we watched these folks do this, I actually had our folks from the highway yard go down to APD and put it around their tree well. So it's really easy to use. It's not the cheapest stuff in the world. Each tree well is about $250, but hopefully the weeds don't grow up and we don't have any trip hazards with them. So liquid fuels, just to touch on that fund, City of Altoona receives between 1.3 and 1.5 million in liquid fuels revenue through PennDOT. The amount is simplistically derived from a formula that just takes into account the number of lane miles that we have and the population of the city. It's funded through the PA gas tax. Again, this slide just kind of shows what those funds are used for. One thing to mention here is that as people drive less and less, or they gravitate towards, you know, electric vehicles, this has declined because of COVID and or, you know, more energy efficient cars, I guess. So hopefully they come up with some formula to help us out to stay true and we don't get hit real hard on this in the future. So again, without diving into the weeds, I'll again mention that the city is part of the Blair County Intergovernmental Stormwater Committee. We are in the third year of our 5-year permit cycle. We, along with the other municipalities of Blair County, our task as part of our permit to build these pollution reduction projects, unfunded and federal mandates, state mandates to do this. The ISC holds monthly meetings over at the Logan Township building. We always welcome the public to attend to express their concern about stormwater. Along with the projects that we have to do, the Public Works also has to conduct operations in an environmentally friendly manner and set forth in our MS4 permit. These tasks include an annual inlet and outfall inspections, illicit discharges, so we have to chase soapy suds across town if somebody calls it in, see where it's at, and then take care of the enforcement of it if there is an action that has to take place there. Post-construction stormwater management review, so any of the developments that have a pond or underground retention, we have to inspect once every 5 years. We have about 78 or 80 in the city. Aside from the project costs themselves, you know, the cost of the city, I think, is probably one full-time employee between the three of us that kind of look after this. This year coming up, 2022, our biggest task is going to be adopting the ordinance in line with PA DEP's 2022 model ordinance. It has to deal with the floodplain areas in town and also some things that folks are going to have to do to prove that they're trying to do the best thing they can for the environment. So it's not as bad as it sounds, but it is coming up that we will be talking about. And the one thing here is that we are in the middle of the permit cycle, so we should be hearing soon what we have to do to the next permit cycle. Depending on what that is, that may spur some conversations on rain taxes or user fees, or just how funding is going to take place. We have heard nothing so far, so hopefully we hear something soon. We've been very fortunate on what we have applied for in terms of grant assistance, but these don't come without their own fair share of headaches. As most state and federal grants, there's more stringent requirements in terms of planning, redundant reporting, contract goals, material invoicing, reimbursements, contract requirements, etc. Jane Gill and Sam Rogers from our engineering department do a great job of making sure all these details get taken care of. Overall, for the projects that we have, I can go through them one by one, but we have some signal projects that we've done, and these kind of cross years. Like, we'll apply for a grant one year, we'll get the grant the next year, and then we'll come back the following year and build the project. So, for the money that we've gotten, we're paying about 17 cents on the dollar for these. So that slide just shows a couple of the ones that we kind of have in the works or have been unsuccessful for as of late. Not much new on the PennDOT front. We still partner with them. We still have an agility agreement. We cut 17th Street and a lot of the islands on the state roads. They supply us line painting in the spring and then salt brine for winter services. It's about a $24,000 cost benefit agreement. And they also have a Connects program that we get to review the projects that come up in the city on state roads. And, we kind of get to put our input in. Whether they accept it or not, that's a different story, but we at least get to talk to them about that. 2020, COVID didn't really allow us to partner with a lot of the community partners such as Penn State or the Altoona School District for a lot of the programs that we used to do with them, like spread mulch and clean up culverts and repaint and stuff like that. But just wanted to give a shout out to the Blair Goat Garden Club. They have that area that's down there. It's around 7th Street and Chestnut Avenue. They do a great job of the flowers down there. And also Robert's Four Seasons. They take care of cutting the grass up at Gospel Hill for us. So, this report really was a snapshot of 2020, and we're almost through 21 now, and I think 22 is really setting up to be a struggle at this point in time. We've seen things change here very rapidly over the last 6 months, a lot of times not for the better. First 6 items that I kind of mentioned on this slide, we don't have a lot of control in, but we still try to stay vigilant. If we know that there is a certain material shortage, we may end up buying more so that we, or we buy sooner, or we're really cognizant. Seems like there's shortages on everything right now, longer lead times to get materials. A lot of times for truck drivers, wages are, we're competing with in different types of classes. There's the public sector has really started to kind of inch up on us. So, if you're really looking to make $100,000, you can go out on over the road driving a tractor trailer. We're kind of starting to compete with that type of, those type of funding streams. Labor shortages, I think in general, I think everybody sees signs out there. We've seen it this year with not getting any, as much part-time help as we have. Material shortages, I talk about contractor shortages. Councilman Kelly brought up last council meeting about, trying to get ahead of the curve on some of these projects. And I think it's really important because I don't think there's going to be enough contractors to do the work once, a lot of this ARRA money comes out and gets into full swing. A couple of the other things that we want to talk to you about, parking concerns. We're in fall here. I picked the theme of the colors here on the report because it is fall. Winter's right around the corner. Parking is an issue in the city. It always is. So, some of the streets that are narrower, there's no shortage of cars in Altoona. So we're hoping to have a conversation about that. Driveway changes, we're wanting to talk about that because we have contractors doing work in the right of way with really no recourse to do the right thing to get a permit. And we never really hear about issues until they are issues. So we want to talk about that. Stormwater investigation, in addition to the other activities that we really do annually, we're going to have to probably set up some task force with our folks just to go out and see what condition the pipes are in so that we can get, a lot of these stormwater projects out and, put the money where it best serves the public. So that's what's up next. That's all I have. You can visit the Public Works Department under the Government tab at altoonapa.gov. On that page, you can find lists of projects, tips for winter services, stormwater information, adopt the median paperwork, and floodplain information.
Nate, I had a couple of questions, if you wouldn't mind.
Yes, sir.
And one of the things you just touched on at the end was stormwater investigation. I mean, I think that's, let me step back. Let me just say, I appreciate all the hard work of Public Works because you're doing it with fewer people. And so thank you, and thank you for everybody in Public Works. But the stormwater investigation is probably really timely as we look at this ARP money. So I guess I'm just emphasizing that I think that should really look to be a priority.
Definitely on our radar.
And I know that it's not like you don't have enough priorities, so I realize that. A couple other questions I had. With 574,000 pounds of material that the street sweepers pick up, where in the world do you put all that?
We have a permitted waste site in Juniata,
Okay.
so that's taken care of. And we actually have two sites that site may end up being a trailhead for that Logan Township trolley car trail that runs into Annis Township. So, thinking ahead, we just permitted two sites, one on what would be the south end of the city going up Sugar Run, and then one close to Westfall Park.
Okay, now and we had talked about the Westfall Park one
Correct.
before. So that's all clean fill?
Correct.
We're talking about?
Yep.
Okay. The alley paving, and you mentioned that project in the Juniata section. What's our policy regarding alley paving?
Loosely, we've asked for about $100,000 a year. Steve Walker, our paving inspector, goes out every year, looks at every roadway, and then the highway foreman, there's one on each side of town, one on the El Dorado side, one on the Juniata side. They give him a list of the alleys that they want to see paved. A lot of times we can't get them all, so a lot of the alleys will do, or because they're washout problems, or they're just in horrible disrepair. That's really, so they give him a list, he looks at it, and they divvy it out about half and half on each side of the city and
Okay.
do, so.
That's kind of on an as-need basis then. So we do take care of some of that.
We do pepper them in.
Okay.
We started to put it in the capital program because their trucks are hauling 22 tons each, and ours hold about 5, so it's better served to let a contractor do it, and we can focus on activities that we're really good at.
Well, especially with shorter, smaller staff
Yeah.
trying to do it. And one more thing for you, and then I'll give you a break, sorry. And that is with the street cuts that get done by utilities. And a lot of that gets subbed out. There's a subcontractor that does that work for the utility companies. Do we have a standard that they have to adhere to when they're filling that back in?
We actually do 4/5 of it in-house.
Okay,
We have a contractor that does help us out doing it, and they follow the same standard that we do, which is, we used to do a concrete base and then an inch of top, and it just wasn't holding up, so it's about 4.5 inches of base and an inch of top, unless it's a road that we know is going to be paved within a year or two, and then we'll bring it the whole way up with base. If it's a road we're going to mill, and repave, I guess.
okay. Thank you.
So you mentioned about labor shortages and contractor shortages and whatnot, and earlier in the report, talking about unfortunately losing some people to budget cuts. So the labor shortage you were talking about, you're talking about in-house through budget cuts and attrition, or you're talking about like private contractors that we're gonna need for, for projects that we sub out for?
I think internally, we are going to have trouble finding skilled workers such as electricians, plumbers, HVAC people, that because on the street, they're $7,500 an hour. So we're gonna struggle that way, but I just know from talking to private contractors also, there's just an over-the-top,
Yeah.
shortage of tradesmen, mechanics, equipment operators, anything really. So that's, it's all going to compound here. It might be the perfect storm here over the next couple of years.
And that's also above and beyond getting somebody licensed to work within the city that is a specialized trade, such as the plumbing licensures and the electric licensures that we have in place.
I would think so, yes.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Nick.
Yep.
Thank you, Nate. All right, moving on to, before we get into public comment, we had an executive session after our last meeting on September 27th to discuss personnel and real estate. Now we will open the floor for public comment. If anybody would like to address council, you may do so by going to the podium, stating your name and address for the record. And we ask that you keep your comments to 5 minutes. And if anybody would like to call in from home, you may do so by dialing the number on the screen.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. My name is David Wolslego. I reside at 1422 North 8th Avenue in the city. What I come before you tonight is to talk about a little bit about Juniata, and good timing tonight to have this video that we had and the information. And my hat's off to the Public Works Department because I think they do an outstanding job. They're probably one of the last unsung heroes of the city of Altoona, because plowing itself, which I've done, is a hard job when you're out there in a snowstorm and you've been doing it for 10 hours and you can't see where you're driving and you have cars that are within 2 or 3 inches of you on both sides. So these guys really work, and these folks, I should say, because some of them are women, work very hard for us in the city, and I certainly do appreciate everything they do, and I appreciate what you do. But what my point is that I've come before you with is that there is a couple issues in Juniata that definitely need to be addressed in the Public Works Department, and I appreciate if you would just give me a few seconds to explain them. There's a drainage ditch on North 4th Avenue and 15th Street that on both sides, and the folks that did the paving did a wonderful job, but it left a 12 to 8 in some areas, and that's the least. It's 8 inches deep drainage ditch on both sides, and in some areas it's even 10 inches deep and about 2 feet wide. That's a snow emergency route. It's also a area where the school buses pick up the students. It's just, if somebody come down over there over the hill, it's a very steep hill. If somebody come down there with a bike and ended up in there, they would end up into the fence, or, God knows what could happen to them. But it is
What
a safety
avenue was
issue.
that? Was that North 4th?
It is
or-
the intersection of North 4th Avenue and North 15th Street. They
Okay.
just recently paved it in the last few weeks, but it raised the surface of the road and left a very large drainage ditch on both sides, very deep. And it just needs to be addressed sooner than later, especially before winter, because if somebody were to slide into that, and it's not a very wide area, it's not a legally wide road, if there's such a thing. It's just not very wide at that area. People have to stop and wait for the other car to come. Another one is the streetlights in Juniata. I don't know what's going on. Maybe they were all replaced at the same time, but it seems to me like there's a lot of them going out all at the same time. So I thought I would bring that to your attention. The other one is the flagpole at East Juniata Recreation Park needs to be, painted, and it needs to have a flag put on it with a light. For years now, I've been at that area to vote, and there's never been a flag flying at that flag post, and I don't know what it is. It's sat there for years vacant with nobody fixing it. It needs to have a pulley and a rope put on it, and a flag put on it. I'm a veteran. I appreciate if the flag would be put on that. And that parking area there needs to be resurfaced. It's getting to be actually going to be a major repair if they soon don't resurface it. And I've noticed senior citizens getting out to come in to vote, and when I'm there, and they have some issues because there's some deep cracks and such within it, because they have walkers and such, and they can't really get over it. The last thing I have is and this is a bigger issue, is the lines in Juniata and the business district of Juniata. There is a business district in Juniata, and they have been, I don't know, since the new sidewalks have been put in and the updates in that area with lighting, the crosswalks have never been repainted, and the parking areas have never been repainted. They've been done a couple times in downtown Altoona and also over by City Hall, but this area has never been addressed. And this is a very busy business district, and there are a lot of businesses in that area. And I've talked to business owners in that area, and they have said to me, I don't know why they come to talk to me about it, but they do, maybe because I'm one of the only ones that goes before council for things. But they've asked if they could get those parking areas painted and the crosswalks redone. So, but anyhow, I thank you so much and appreciate your time. And once again, my hat seriously is totally off for the Public Works Department, because you guys do a wonderful job, all of your staff. And I didn't realize till tonight just how much exactly you do, and which is amazing to me how much you do. But thank you. As a citizen, I certainly appreciate it.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Nobody online? Okay, if there's no more public comment, we will close the floor and move into the resolutions.
Item A is approving the minutes of the Altoona City Council meeting held Monday, September 13th, 2021. Item B is amending the 2020 street reconstruction project in regards to the proposed locations submitted with the application for community development block grant funding to the actual locations posted for public review. Item C is amending the 2020 home program to adjust estimated program income to reflect actual program income received between July 1 and July 1, 2020 and June 30th, 2021. Item D is amending the 2020 Community Development Block Grant Program to adjust estimated program income from the beginning of the program to reflect actual income received between July 1, 2020 and June 30th, 2021. Item E is approving an easement agreement between the City of Altoona and Powder Mill Corporation for construction, installation, repair, and maintenance of an underground electrical line and above-ground meters on a tract of land at 1701 8th Avenue, Altoona, and further authorizing the mayor to execute all documents and the city clerk to attest to same. Item F is approving the submission of a grant application to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for a multimodal transportation fund grant in the amount of $1,856,250 for repairs and upgrades to the Altoona Transportation Center Improvement Project, and further authorizing the city manager to execute all documents associated with the grant application and for the city clerk to attest to same as needed. Item G is amending and restating the fee resolution 111-19 to include updating language and fees to reflect the small cell ordinance number 5781 as follows: the addition of small cell wireless facility fees and the deletion of the current language for wireless communication facilities. Item H is approving the sale or trade-in of the attached list of capital assets by internet auction as follows, in accordance with the Chapter 295 of the City Codified Ordinances, disposition of surplus real and personal property, estimated revenue $24,000. Item I is awarding the City Hall fourth floor suite remodel project to Clark Contractors of Bedford in the amount of $37,972.84, and further authorizing the city manager to execute all documents and the city clerk to attest to same. Item J is approving an initial earmark of $4 million of the city's ARPA funds for the Department of Public Works stormwater management projects, including those attached here too. Are there any additions, deletions, or anything that needs to be pulled for a separate vote?
Linda, I would like to pull G to be tabled if possible, if everybody would be okay with that. And the reason for that is I would like to, before we adopt it and make it official, I would like to get input from the wireless industry on this, to see what kind of fees they're seeing in other municipalities around the state, so that that we're also in line with that and not standing in the way of 5G deployment here.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay. I'll go ahead and call the vote on all items, a consent vote on all items excluding item G. Vice Mayor Butterbaugh,
Yes.
Councilman Kashotti,
Yes.
Councilman Carper,
Yes.
Councilman Ickes,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jordan is absent, Councilman Kelly,
Yes.
and Mayor Pacifico.
Yes.
The consent vote passes 6-0.
Okay, and we have 3 ordinances on the agenda tonight that we have Jens Daumgard with us, who is going to give a brief description on the 3 ordinances that are before us.
Thank you, Mayor. Good to see you all. Yes, you have 3 ordinances that are appropriate for first reading, and I'll just briefly describe each one. The first one, number 1, deals with a refinancing of existing debt of the city. Now, you recall, or you may recall, bond issues typically provide that the bond issue cannot be prepaid for a number of years, and that usually is minimum of 5 years. The city's 2016 bonds can be prepaid as of March 1 of 2022. So as long as we issue the new bonds within 90 days of that date, then we are in compliance with federal tax laws. So that window opened, and because of the low interest rates we're all aware of, that opportunity presents itself. At the same time, financial advisor Concord Public Finance is looking at some of the bank loans that have been used to finance prior capital budgets as an opportunity to save money and also to possibly avoid a variable rate commencement and to lock in rates for a lower rate. So hence the ordinance would permit the issuance. Now we call it bonds, and that could be that it could either be a bank loan, in which case the bank would receive a bond, or it could be publicly offered bonds. The city has done both, depending on circumstances and size and so forth. So that is not determined. The ordinance has a number of blanks, but those blanks will be filled in for the final reading. And we will know exactly at that time the direction, and I believe Chris Gibbons from Concord will be here to give you a report on their recommendation and the direction that'll be in. Do you want me to take them all at once or questions individually?
Anybody have any questions on that one?
Okay. The second one, as you recall, has been the past practice of the city that whenever the Altoona Water Authority seeks funding, and it's been the funding it has been seeking and been successful at these last few years is with the Pennsylvania Infrastructure Investment Authority, known as PennVest. And why? Because they're getting 1% loans for 20 years fixed. And they applied for, and now just the next 2 ordinances are for 2 of those projects related. They applied basically at the same time for improvements to the Bellwood Dam and the water treatment facility in that area. So the application was successful in both cases. There were 2 different loans awarded. Before you can close on a PennVest loan, you have to get bids and confirm indeed that you have enough money in the funding package. Bids were opened, and as we've seen, we've heard from Public Works, bids are coming in high. In this case, they did come in higher than the estimates that were included with the PennVest applications. Penvest is expected, and they've given indications that it will be approved for additional funding required for those projects. So they have firm bids for both of those projects, and those bids are reflected in these loan amounts. In the case of the dam, it's $24,500,000. In the case of the water treatment facility, $11,125,000. So what we're doing tonight is, in the ordinance, is approving a guarantee by the city of that loan, of both those loans, I'm sorry. And the reason is, as you recall, the city owns the system. So the city is expected to pledge its full faith credit and taxing power in addition to the pledge of the water revenues that the authority provides, and also that the Penvest expects an assignment of lease rentals. Remember the way that works, that the creditors get paid first. So Penvest will likewise be in that situation. This is just like we've done in probably the last 3 guarantees like this. So there's nothing new here in that regard. So I'll be, this, again, there's really not much in the way of change between this and the final reading. Nothing really going to change.
Jens, from
Yes, sir.
our phone conversation earlier today, on number 1, you said that there's some
Yes.
blanks in there, and essentially this initial reading is allowing the public financing group, you or the financial advisor, to go to the banks and make that final determination, whether it's bonds or bank loans, et cetera, which that will be provided to us ahead of time before the second proposed.
And I know Omar's had discussions with Chris Gibbons, and those negotiations are ongoing.
Yeah, so, rather than just go the route of saying we're just gonna do bonds, public issue bonds, or just a bank loan, we typically look at the whole market to see what's the best interest rates that we can acquire through whatever source may be available, and that's what we're doing right now. I was on a call yesterday with a financial advisor, and we're working with a number of different banks to try to confirm exactly what their proposals are, whether it meets the standards that we need for the funding.
And as we discussed, this does not stretch out any loans. They're basically all going to be paid off with the same time frame as they currently exist. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jens.
Okay, so we have the first ordinance for introduction. It is an ordinance of the City of Altoona authorizing and securing the issuance of one or more general obligation bonds in the aggregate principal amount of $28 million pursuant to the Pennsylvania Local Government Unit Debt Act to refund all or portions of this city's general obligation bonds, series of 2016, and its general obligation notes, series of 2015, 2019, and 2020, and pay issuance costs, accepting a proposal to purchase the bonds, pledging the full faith credit and taxing power of this city to secure the bonds, appointing a paying agent and sinking fund depositary, and approving related actions and documents. Is there a council member willing to introduce this ordinance?
So moved.
This ordinance was introduced by Vice Mayor Butterbaugh. We have a second ordinance for introduction, which is an ordinance of the City of Altoona incurring lease rental debt as defined in the Pennsylvania Local Government Unit Debt Act in a principal amount not to exceed $24,500,000 evidenced by its guarantee of the 100% of the payments due under a debt obligation of the Altoona Water Authority issued to the Pennsylvania Infrastructure Investment Authority, Penvest, in connection with the water system operated by the authority and pay related expenses, authorizing a guarantee agreement by and among this city as guarantor, the authority and Penvest as lender, securing the debt obligation, pledging certain water system lease revenues of this city and the full faith credit and taxing power of this city in support of its guarantee, appointing a sinking fund depository in connection with such guarantee, and authorizing related actions and documents. Is there a council member willing to introduce this ordinance?
So moved.
This ordinance was introduced by Councilman Ickes. The third ordinance for introduction is an ordinance of the City of Altoona incurring lease rental debt as defined in the Pennsylvania Local Government Unit Debt Act in a principal amount not to exceed $11,125,000, evidenced by its guarantee of 100% of the payments due under a debt obligation of the Altoona Water Authority issued to the Pennsylvania Infrastructure Investment Authority, PennVest, in connection with the water system operated by the authority, and pay related expenses, authorizing a guarantee agreement by and among this city as guarantor, the authority and PennVest as lender, securing the debt obligation, pledging certain water system lease revenues of this city, and the full faith, credit, and taxing power of this city in support of its guarantee, appointing a sinking fund depository in connection with such guarantee, and authorizing related actions and documents. Is there a council member willing to introduce this ordinance? This ordinance was introduced by Councilman Kashadi.
Okay, we'll move along to the city manager updates. Omar?
Thank you, Mayor. As some of you, I think, already know, last Thursday, at the request of the president, Joe Hurd, the chamber president, I spoke in front of a breakfast meeting roundtable, so to speak, with the chamber board. Discussion included a lot of questions and answers related to city's functions and, its approach towards business. And it was, mostly included a lot of business leaders in the community. I don't like to judge it. It's difficult for me to judge as one of the participants, but I think I presented myself and the city well at that meeting. Next item I have is that the Greyhound has renewed its lease at the Transportation Center. It's a 3-year renewal. It's an automatic renewal unless they let us know that they're not gonna renew, and we just confirmed that yesterday, and just wanted to pass that along. And lastly, the city's preliminary budget for 2022 is finished, at least at the staff level, and it will be distributed to council in advance of our budget meeting next Monday, just so you know.
Thanks, Omar. Moving on to council discussion items. Councilman Kelly?
One thing we may want to add for a work session topic is there will probably be some type of infrastructure bill in Washington, some type. What that looks like, we don't know. But with that infrastructure bill, I think it's worth us discussing, and I don't know how many people in this room will remember this, but the Kettle Street interchange at I-99, which was deferred, was never deleted from the plan, but it was deferred.
Yes.
And does this present the opportunity for us to look at that again? And is it a good thing? It's going way back. That's, and that was kicked around, but it was in the design. It was there. It was deferred. It wasn't deleted. And I'm just wondering if that shouldn't be a discussion topic for us at one of our work sessions to think about that. And there's going to be money coming, and we need to be ready for that. And that might be something that has some significant impact to the community, not just Altoona, but all of Blair County and the surrounding municipalities. So I think something that we should at least talk about, have some discussion on. Mayor, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Carper?
I have nothing to add at this time, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilman Butterball?
I just wanted to commend Nate and the gang at Public Works for doing a great job this year. You guys had a lot of challenges, a lot of stormwater challenges especially, and did a great job rising to the occasion. Also, Mr. Horschlegel brought up some excellent points earlier, and one of the things that I would like to do here is pay a little more attention to the area there. Some of us refer to it as downtown Juniata. We're very blessed as a city. We have our downtown, but we also have an excellent section of Juniata over there that has been revitalizing, and the business folks have been just doing a great job there. And so I'd like to see
us look into that area and really see some help there in keeping that ball rolling in a positive direction.
Councilman Minnickus?
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight we took some action on doing a soft earmark of the $4 million for the stormwater program. And, we went through the work session, was that last week or the week before? They're all kind of running together at this point
Yeah.
as we're halfway through October. But I really would like us to consider an allocation for the land bank usage that I think we had talked about. I would be an advocate for $5 million into that program. I would like to see $2 million allocated into a revolving loan fund. And I think we should capitalize on what the ARPA program allows us to do, which is to reconstitute those positions that we ended up having to shrink our departments in. And I think we should claim those dollars to, particularly from a police standpoint, which has been in the news a couple of different times, but we really need to do everything we can to get our police department back to the 66 full-time officers. So those are my thoughts this evening, and appreciate the chance to speak. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Kashadi?
I wanted to bring up and remind everybody about Trick or Treat Night, and I can't remember when it is. When is it?
Thursday, the
Is
28th.
it the 28th?
Wow.
Okay, I thought it was the 28th, but I didn't
And
want
what's
to get
your
it wrong.
costume
as you-
going to be, Matt?
Yeah.
That's what we'd like to know.
Thursday,
Yeah.
October 28th from 6 to 8 p.m.
So the 28th from 6 to 8 p.m.
Yes.
in the city, the Trick or Treat Night. Look, I got a 3-year-old, so I get to claim his candy. So I have to make sure. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's right. He pays me 30% of all the candy he gets. So.
As Gabriel's agent, we'd like to negotiate.
Yeah. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions from the media, Bill?
Mayor,
Yes.
if I could, I just wanted to remind people that starting next Monday, which is October the 18th, is brush collection and then leaf collection.
Good
And
thinking.
all of the
Yeah.
information about that is on our website, altoonapa.gov, or they can call my office, 949-2486. Thanks.
Thank you, Linda.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there an update, I guess this is for Omar, is there an update on the McCrory's building situation?
Bill, no preliminary objections were filed. The matter has not yet been resolved. It remains in active litigation at this point, so I can't comment further about that.
You can't explain what that means?
I can just tell you no preliminary objections have been filed.
Can you say what the city's options are if there are no, because the deadline for filing them is gone, right?
Correct. So what I can tell you is in a general sense, when preliminary objections aren't filed, the remaining issue is just compensation.
Does compensation need to be, and I know I've thought or asked about this before, and I'm not sure I understand. Does compensation need to be resolved before you can actually before the plaintiff, in your case the city, actually takes possession and begins to do whatever it needs to do?
There are some preliminary steps that would have to be accomplished before that. Just compensation isn't necessarily one of them.
Can you say what the steps are?
There's a process about tendering and a process about receiving it, which has not yet been completed.
Tendering and receiving?
Yes.
You mean like offering and accepting?
Yeah, that has not occurred as of yet.
Is that something that's the city's in control of?
I really can't come any further at this point in time because it's an active litigation process at this point. So,
When you say active litigation, does that mean that the property owner is suing the city?
no, there's litigation that was initiated through the declaration of taking, and it has not come to a final resolution, so that would still be an active matter pending.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Regarding, Omar, regarding the transportation center, the application for this, that means that there will be both the PennDOT and the DCED applications in for.
Correct, yes,
And it's the same project, right, as before?
yes.
Okay. The, Omar again, the first ordinance for refinancing, is that the same as was discussed at the work session? Or
Yeah.
is, did you add the bond that you didn't think you could refinance?
No, we, were not able to, I believe it's the 2019, there's one that we, the year eludes me at this point, but there's one that we can't include because it's not callable until next year. However, what we did include was the debt issuance that we had back in 2020, which we've used to fund the, our capital projects for the last couple of years. So that is eligible. We think we can save some money there because we're probably at all-time low interest rates. So we're looking at that as well.
I'm and could you identify that one again? I didn't catch that one, the one that you added.
It's the 2020 issuance. So that issuance was used to fund 2020 and 2021 capital projects. It is eligible for refinance, and we think we can establish a savings that would be significant enough to enter it into, along with the other issues that we're refinancing, that would be in the best interest of the city financially.
Okay. So if you could tell me, like, how much is that for and how much you're gonna save by refinancing it? To add to what I wrote last month, I
It's
guess.
probably about 7.8 million, I believe. And we're looking at least a 2% savings across the board. So if we can't achieve, there's certain minimum savings for any of these issues that are being refinanced. If we can't achieve that savings, then we're not going to enter into it.
Mhm. Okay, so more savings you're expecting more savings than you did last at the work session?
Yes,
You did,
yeah.
okay. The stormwater projects, which I see that there's a list in the packet. Nate, could you explain like how they relate to the areas that need to be helped, I guess, as were brought up by the people who were flooded out in recent times at the work sessions for the ARP money? Because it's not real clear from the listing here.
The projects that went into that list are projects that we see on the horizon that are that are either shovel ready, or we just need to get the design started on some of these issues. So, for example, the Pleasant Valley area is earmarked to start the flood study on. So that's not an actual physical construction project, it's a planning phase of that.
Meaning number 11 on that.
I guess I don't have it in front of me, but some of the other projects were shovel ready, and we asked as part of the last capital fund, because we did have a multitude of projects on there already that we were going to ask for capital funds to do. So we just sort of transferred some of these from those requests into the ARRA. So we're going to start to provide some relief in the areas in the form of designs and what works best for those areas with this. So there's no real immediate relief, but we're looking at planning, and there's projects on there like slip lining, routes such as 17th Street. Those were all, there's no design. That's just the pipes are failing. They need fixed. We can get it out right now and get going. So half of the requests were those types of requests, and the other ones were, from time now, looking forward about a year or so to get started, to go through the preliminary phases, I guess.
Would all of these projects be related in some way, let me reverse it. Would all the areas of the city that were named by the people who came to those meetings for the ARP money that seem to need help, are they all going to be helped in one way or another by at least some of these?
No, I think
proposals?
we're in the process of investigating whether or not, I guess they can be, and how much it's going to cost to help them. So some of these are like I said, they're planning dollars. So, you can spend $40 million in an area trying to fix something that you're not going to fix. So, we're going to look at all of the areas, with this request that we have, but, that necessarily doesn't, transpond into construction.
Mhm. So it'd be hard to relate to some of these particular projects to the issues that were raised in those meetings specifically, is it?
Yeah, for an example, Calvert Hills, I think, is on that list. That's an area that goes 21st Avenue, 20th Avenue, 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th, 2 pipe runs in the Fairview area, a holding tank under Fairview, improvements down at the spray park. So that it has a lot of stuff in it. So that's the planning part of the process. Whether or not, individual pieces in there get picked out for construction, that's yet to be determined, I guess, through this.
Okay. And then Bruce, the kettle interchange that you talked about. I know I guess I've written about that a long time ago, but I don't. Where exactly would that intersect with 99?
Kettle Street.
That would probably be a better question for PennDOT though, Bill.
Yeah. I mean, but it's the, it was the Kettle Street interchange, so it would be in the general area of Kettle Street, off of I-99.
Mhm,
And
okay.
it was just decided that at the time they didn't have the funds to do that, and they moved on with the project. So, I mean, I'm just saying that with this bill, is this something that we should be looking at, that there may be monies come available, and would that be a project that we should be talking about?
Do you have any idea how much it would cost?
I have no idea. And, and as you said, that was many years ago, so I'm sure the cost has multiplied considerably since then.
Mhm. Pardon my ignorance if I'm just completely all wet on this, but this is not the same project that was considered and talked about for a long time related to Pinecroft, coming down through Pinecroft?
No,
Um,
it is not.
Okay.
That project was to take Pinecroft into Juniata.
Oh, right, okay, gotcha. Okay, that's all I have, thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Meeting is adjourned.